The iron-heavy scent of hospital antiseptic always made me nauseous, but today, the nausea was coming from the two people sitting across from my thin hospital bed. My mother was checking her gold-plated watch, and my father was scrolling through a brochure for a luxury golf resort. "I need $20,000 for the surgery, Dad," I said, my voice rasping. The internal bleeding from the accident had been stabilized, but the reconstructive surgery on my shattered hip couldn't wait. "The doctors say if I don't get it this week, I'll never walk without a cane. I've been giving you 70% of my paycheck for 5 years. Please." My father didn't even look up. "Leo's final semester at Columbia is coming up, Sarah. We just transferred the last of the family fund to his housing account. He's the future of this family, a world-class architect. You're just an auditor. You can sit at a desk with a cane." A family fund? I felt a cold chill wash over me. "You mean my college fund? The money Grandpa left me? The money I've been topping up by working 3 jobs while you guys told me Leo's scholarship didn't cover essentials?" My mother finally looked at me, her eyes cold and dismissive. "Don't be dramatic. Leo is a genius. He's a golden child for a reason. You were born to support the foundation of this family, Sarah. You're the bridge he walks on to get to the top. Be proud of that. Besides, we've already leveraged the equity in the house to make sure he has a pristine start at Sterling and Associates next month." "The house?" I gasped. "My grandfather's house. My inheritance. You put the house at risk for him?" "It's an investment in a winner," my father snapped, finally standing up. "Stop being selfish. We're leaving for his pre-graduation gala in the Hamptons. Don't call us unless it's an emergency. And by emergency, I don't mean you whining about a limp." They walked out without looking back. No hug, no get well soon, just the clicking of my mother's designer heels I probably paid for. I lay there for hours, the silence of the hospital room ringing in my ears. I felt like a husk. For years, I had worked myself to the bone, day shift as a junior auditor, evening shift at a high-end restaurant, and weekend data entry. Every cent went to the Leo fund. I ate ramen so he could eat ribeye. I took the bus so he could drive a BMW. I reached for my laptop on the tray table. If I was going to be a bridge, I wanted to see exactly what was crossing over me. I'm a lead forensic auditor for a reason. I have tools, I have access. I started with Leo's tuition portal. I'd helped him set it up years ago, and he was too arrogant to change the password. My heart stopped when the screen loaded. Status: withdrawn. Enrollment terminated 2 years ago. Leo hadn't been in Columbia for 2 years. I dug deeper, my fingers flying over the keys despite the pain in my hip. I followed the money trail, the thousands of dollars my parents had been squeezing out of me and the house equity. It wasn't going to a bursar's office. It was being funneled into an offshore digital wallet linked to a high-stakes underground gambling site called the Velvet Table. He wasn't an architect. He was a degenerate gambler. And the luxury apartment photos he sent, they were from an Airbnb he rented for weekends to trick my parents when they visited. He was living in a drug den of a studio, burning through my life's blood one hand of blackjack at a time. But the final blow came when I checked the incoming mail notifications on my father's shared cloud account. There was a digital welcome packet from Sterling and Associates, the prestigious firm my brother was supposedly joining. I scrolled through the attachment. It wasn't an offer for Leo. It was a confirmation of a senior partnership invitation for the new lead forensic auditor of the East Coast Division. The name on the contract? Sarah Miller. They didn't know. My parents were so blinded by Leo's fake prodigy status that they never even asked where I had been promoted to. They thought I was a low-level paper pusher. They didn't realize that in 3 weeks, I wouldn't just be working at the firm Leo bragged about. I would be the one in charge of vetting his credentials for the firm's upcoming merger. I looked at my shattered leg, then back at the screen showing Leo's $400,000 debt to the casino. Born to serve him? I whispered into the dark room. A slow, jagged smile spread across my face. No, I was born to audit him. I picked up the phone and called the surgeon's office. I didn't need my parents' money. I had a secret savings account they didn't know about, a break glass in case of emergency fund I'd hidden for years. "Schedule the surgery," I told the receptionist, "and make sure I can walk in 3 weeks. I have a very important meeting to attend." The war hadn't just started. It was already over. They just didn't know the building was rigged to explode. The recovery was a blur of agonizing physical therapy and cold, calculated digital scouting. While my parents sent me inspirational quotes via text, usually followed by a request for another $500 for Leo's textbooks, I was learning how to walk again. And while I learned to walk, I learned how to ruin them. By the time I checked into my new office at Sterling and Associates, the limp was barely noticeable if I wore the right heels. The office was a glass and steel fortress of power overlooking Manhattan. As the new lead forensic auditor, I was the gatekeeper. Nothing moved in or out of this firm's upcoming $2 billion merger without my seal of approval. On my first Monday, I sat in the executive boardroom. My boss, Marcus Sterling, gestured toward a pile of resumes. "Sarah, we're bringing on a cohort of junior associates to handle the grunt work for the merger. One name came highly recommended by some influential donors, Leo Miller. Says here he's a Columbia prodigy, top of his class. Do me a favor and give his file a gold standard scrub. If he's as good as they say, I want him on your direct team." I felt a surge of dark adrenaline. "I'll handle it personally, Marcus. I believe in keeping family close." I opened Leo's physical file. It was a masterpiece of fiction, forged transcripts, a glowing recommendation from a professor who had actually died 3 years ago, and a portfolio of architectural designs he'd clearly stolen from a student blog in Singapore. But I didn't flag it. Not yet. If I flagged it now, he'd just be rejected, and my parents would find another way to coddle him. No, I needed him inside. I needed him to sign legal documents. I needed him to step onto the bridge I was building. That night, I went to my parents' house, the house that was currently being bled dry by a second mortgage. The atmosphere was celebratory. Champagne was on ice. Leo was there, looking tanned and smug in a $3,000 suit that I knew from his bank records had been bought with money meant for my hospital recovery. "Sarah, look at you, walking," my mother said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "You see, we told you that surgery wasn't an emergency. You just needed some grit." "Actually, I paid for it myself," I said, sitting down. Leo smirked, swirled his glass. "Well, that's good, sis, because I'm going to need a little loan for my first month's wardrobe at Sterling. You know, since I'm going to be an executive, I can't be seen in off-the-rack garbage." "Sterling and Associates?" I asked, feigning surprise. "That's a big deal, Leo. Are you sure you're ready for the background check? They're very thorough." Leo's face flickered for a microsecond, a shadow of panic before the arrogance returned. "Dad's friends handled the HR department. The background check is a formality. I'm a shoo-in." My father patted Leo's shoulder. "Our boy is going to be the youngest partner in history. We're thinking of selling this place and moving into a penthouse near his office. Leo says he'll manage the transition for us." "Is that so?" I looked at the legal documents on the coffee table. My father had already signed a power of attorney over to Leo. Leo was planning to sell the house, take the cash, and vanish to Macau to clear his gambling debts, leaving our parents homeless. I felt a twinge of pity, but then I remembered the hospital room. "You're the bridge he walks on." "Well, Leo," I said, standing up, "I have a surprise for you. I actually work at Sterling, too. In fact, I'm the one who'll be supervising your probationary period." The color drained from Leo's face. The glass in his hand trembled. You're just a bookkeeper," he stammered. "Things change," I smiled. "See you Monday, prodigy." The first week at the office was a trap of his own making. I assigned Leo to the high-risk asset division. I gave him access to a dummy account, a honeypot I'd created that looked like a slush fund for the merger. To a desperate gambler like Leo, it looked like $500,000 of untraceable cash. I watched through the internal server logs. Monday, he browsed the account. Tuesday, he checked the encryption. Wednesday, he made a small test withdrawal of $5,000. I didn't stop him. I let him take more, $50,000, $100,000. By Friday, he was euphoric. He thought he was a genius who had outsmarted the system. He even had the audacity to text me, "Don't get jealous when I'm promoted over you. Some people are just born for the top." But then, the final piece of the trap clicked into place. Marcus Sterling called an emergency meeting. "Sarah, we have a massive discrepancy in the merger escrow. Someone has been siphoning funds. The SEC is already pinging us." I looked at Leo, who was sitting in the back of the room, turning a sickly shade of gray. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. He thought I would protect him. He thought family meant I would bury the evidence. "I've already identified the source, Marcus," I said, my voice steady and cold. The digital trail leads directly to a private terminal. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a frantic text for my mother. "Sarah, the bank just called. They're foreclosing on the house. Leo said he handled the payments. Do something." I looked at Leo. He was sweating through his expensive suit. He knew I had him, but what he didn't know was that I hadn't just tracked his theft. I'd linked his tuition fraud and the gambling debts to my parents' bank accounts as co-conspirators, since they'd signed the power of attorney documents he'd used to funnel the stolen money. "The evidence is right here," I said, clicking the remote to project the screen. But before I could hit play to show the video of Leo stealing the funds, the door burst open. 2 federal agents walked in. "Leo Miller?" one asked. Leo looked at me, his jaw quivering. "Sarah, please, tell them it was a mistake. We're family." I looked at the agents, then back at my brother. "I don't know this man," I said clearly. "He's just a junior associate under investigation for massive fraud, and I think you'll find his parents are the ones who laundered the money for him." At that moment, my phone rang again. It was my father. I put it on speaker for the whole boardroom to hear. "Sarah, you bitch! Leo said you're the one who stole the house money. He said you're framing him. If you don't fix this, we'll tell everyone you're a thief. We'll ruin you." The boardroom went silent. Marcus Sterling looked at me with horror. The federal agents reached for their handcuffs. Leo saw his opening. He pointed at me, screaming, "She did it. She's the auditor. She set up the accounts. She's the one who's been bitter since the accident." For a second, the room turned on me. The golden child was playing his final card, the good son versus the bittersweet daughter. "Is this true, Sarah?" Marcus asked, his voice low. I didn't blink. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single encrypted flash drive. "This is the recording from 10 minutes ago and the forensic breakdown of where every cent went. But more importantly, this is the audio of what happened in the hospital 3 weeks ago." The boardroom was so silent I could hear the sweat hitting the mahogany table from Leo's forehead. My thumb hovered over the play button on the remote. "Wait!" Leo lunged forward, his face a mask of desperation. "Marcus, she's unstable. She's been on heavy painkillers since her accident. She's hallucinating this whole fraud thing because she's jealous of my career." Marcus Sterling looked at the federal agents, then at me. "Sarah, this is a heavy accusation. If you're wrong, your career is over before it started." "I'm never wrong about the numbers, Marcus," I said. "And the numbers say Leo Miller never spent a single day at Columbia. The numbers say our parents didn't just help him. They knowingly signed off on business expenses that were actually credit lines for illegal gambling dens." I hit the button. First, the audio from the hospital filled the room. My mother's cold, sharp voice echoed through the high-end speakers. "You were born to support the foundation of this family, Sarah. You're the bridge he walks on to get to the top." Then my father. "Don't call us unless it's an emergency, and by emergency I don't mean you whining about a limp." The federal agents exchanged a look. It wasn't evidence of a crime yet, but it destroyed Leo's loving sister, unstable victim narrative instantly. "Now," I said, my voice dropping an octave, "let's look at the bridge in action." I toggled the screen to the forensic map I'd spent all night perfecting. It showed a glowing red line connecting Sterling's escrow account to a series of shell companies. Each shell company was registered in my parents' names. Using the power of attorney, Leo had tricked them into signing. "Leo didn't just steal from the firm," I explained to the room, ignoring my brother's frantic sobbing. "He used our parents as the fall guys. He set up the accounts so that if the SEC ever came knocking, the paper trail stopped at my father's front door. He was going to let his own parents go to prison to cover his blackjack debts." "That's a lie!" Leo screamed, his voice cracking. "I was going to pay it back. I just needed one big win. The merger money was just a loan." "A loan?" One of the federal agents stepped forward, pulling a pair of steel handcuffs from his belt. "Mr. Miller, taking $150,000 from a federally insured escrow account isn't a loan. It's a felony." "But my parents," Leo pointed wildly at the speaker, where my father's voice had just been screaming insults at me. "They knew. They wanted me to succeed. They told me to do whatever it takes." I watched as Leo, the golden child, finally did what all cowards do when cornered. He turned on his creators. To save his own skin, he began confessing every detail: how our parents had helped him forge his high school transcripts years ago, how they'd coached him on how to lie to me to get more money, and how they'd planned to declare bankruptcy on the house and move into a condo he'd bought with stolen funds. I have the signatures, Leo whimpered to the agents. My father signed the wire transfers. He's the one you want, not me. I'm a prodigy. I have a future. You have a cell, the agent replied, grabbing Leo's arm and wrenching it behind his back. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut was the most beautiful melody I had ever heard. Better than any symphony, better than the sound of my own footsteps without a limp. As they dragged Leo toward the door, he looked at me. The smug, untouchable prodigy was gone. In his place was a sniveling boy who had finally run out of other people's lives to burn. Sarah, please, tell them I'm your brother. I don't have a brother, I said, leaning back in my leather chair. I only have a ledger, and your account just hit 0. As the elevator doors closed on Leo, my phone erupted. 50 missed calls, 20 texts. My parents had realized the feds were at their door. Mom, Sarah, the police are here. They're taking your father. Tell them Leo is innocent. Tell them you gave us that money. Dad, you ungrateful brat. We gave you life. You're destroying this family over a hip injury? Fix this now or you are dead to us. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent one final document to the federal prosecutor, the evidence that the retirement house had been purchased using the college fund stolen from me, which constituted elder fraud and tax evasion. Within an hour, the news hit the local wires. Local prodigy arrested in million-dollar merger fraud, parents implicated in money laundering scheme. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city looked small from up here. I wasn't the bridge anymore. I was the one standing on the skyscraper, looking down at the wreckage. But there was one final loose end. My parents were out on bail for 24 hours before their arraignment. They were headed to my apartment, fueled by rage and the belief that they could still bully me into taking the fall. They thought they were coming to a confrontation. They didn't realize they were walking into a final foreclosure. I didn't wait for them at my apartment. I waited for them at the house, the family home. By the time they pulled into the driveway, the for sale sign was already being hammered into the lawn by a bank-appointed contractor. All their belongings, the golden child's trophies, my mother's designer coats, my father's golf clubs, were piled in cardboard boxes on the curb. They scrambled out of their car, looking older and more haggard than I'd ever seen them. Sarah, what is this? My mother shrieked, clutching a box of silver. Call the bank. Tell them there's been a mistake. We're being evicted. There's no mistake, Mom, I said, leaning against my own car, a brand new SUV paid for in cash. Leo confessed to everything. To save his own skin, he told the feds you were the masterminds behind the wire fraud. The bank moved to seize the assets immediately to cover the restitution for Sterling and Associates. My father marched toward me, his face purple. You did this. You tipped them off. We raised you, we fed you, and this is how you repay us? By making us homeless? I didn't make you homeless, I said, my voice as cold as the January wind. Remember, I was born to support the foundation. Well, the foundation just crumbled because the architect was a fraud. You're a monster, my mother sobbed, looking at her ruined life on the sidewalk. We have nowhere to go. Leo is in jail and we have nothing. You have exactly what you gave me when I was in that hospital bed. Grit. I'm sure you'll find a way to survive. After all, you're winners, right? I got into my car. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw my father try to grab a box, but the bottom gave way, spilling Leo's fake diplomas into the mud. They were left standing in the rain, screaming at each other, blaming each other, finally tasting the poverty they had forced on me for a decade. The fallout. Leo Miller was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for grand larceny and wire fraud. Without my parents' money to protect him, he was chewed up by the system. Last I heard, he's working in the prison laundry for 12 cents an hour. Ironic, considering I used to do his laundry for free while working 3 jobs. My parents lost everything, the house, the cars, and their reputation. They moved into a cramped one-bedroom trailer provided by a distant relative they used to look down on. My father works as a night security guard, and my mother is a clerk at a discount store. They still send me letters begging for money. I don't open them. I run them through the office shredder. It's the only audit they get from me now. As for me, I am the youngest senior partner in the history of Sterling and Associates. My hip is fully healed. I walk with a slight, confident stride that reminds me every day of what I overcame. I bought a penthouse overlooking the city. Sometimes I look down at the lights and remember being the bridge. Now, I'm the one who owns the view.